This hour on I-24 News, President Trump says a date and a location have now been set for a summit meeting with North Korea's Kim Jong-un.
We're having very substantive talks with North Korea. I think you're going to be seeing very, very good things.
Palestinian leader Mahmoud Abbas has now apologized for saying this week that Jews caused the Holocaust, but the damage to the peace process may already be done.
In Syria, chemical weapons inspectors have reportedly finished collecting soil samples and examining the site of last month's alleged chemical attack.
And a mandatory evacuation is underway on the big island of Hawaii. A volcano erupted, spitting out red-hot lava and releasing dangerous gases.
From the I-24 News studios in Times Square in New York, this is Crossroads with David Schuster and Tal Heinrich.
President Trump is building up the drama for his summit meeting with the leader of North Korea. Mr. Trump said on this day that a date and a location have been finalized, but he refused to elaborate. However, he said it will be announced soon.
The president made the comments while on his way to the NRA forum in Texas. He stopped to talk to reporters at the White House and then once again before boarding Air Force One. The president said he expects good news soon on 3 American hostages in North Korea. He also spoke about the possibility of the U.S. reducing its troop size in South Korea.
We haven't been asked it. Now, I have to tell you, at some point into the future, I would like to save the money. You know, we have 32,000 troops there. But I think a lot of great things will happen. But troops are not on the table.
For more, let's bring in senior diplomatic correspondent Nina Larson. Nina, Trump told the world today, stay tuned on the details of the summit, the location, the time, as well as on the situation with the 3 American hostages in North Korea. How should we interpret these comments?
Well, I think we should take them somewhat seriously. It does seem that this summit is actually going to take place. He's saying that there's going to be a big announcement soon about where and when and how. However, we didn't hear anything from the Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, today. He made some public remarks at the State Department. He didn't make any announcements, so it's certainly not coming from him today. But he's treating all of this as if it's a bit of a cliffhanger, particularly the fate of the 3 hostages. Again, he's teasing the press and the world, saying that they might be released soon. He'll have news soon, but I don't know if it's really appropriate in the diplomatic sphere.
Rudy Giuliani, the president's new lawyer, said on Wednesday night that they would be released, the hostages would be released on Thursday. It's now Friday. Is there a possibility that Giuliani saying this publicly might have thrown a wrench into the process?
Possibly. It's more likely, David, that this was a precondition by the United States. Pompeo was in North Korea about 3 weeks ago on a secret visit, and it's likely that he said, look, we won't have this summit unless you show something in kind, for example, releasing these American hostages. But at the same time, it's a bit premature the way these public statements are coming out. It's a very delicate issue. We won't know. We can't confirm anything yet, and we don't know what kind of condition health-wise these people are in either.
Could it be, Nina, that it's all part of the game, part of the strategy, making these comments on media, on Twitter, to push North Korea?
Possibly, but I think the families of these gentlemen might be a bit upset by all of this, and it's a matter of their lives, really.
As far as the troop levels, it was just a few days ago, and South Korea said that even if there is a peace deal with the North, they want the 29,000 U.S. troops to stay in the South. Then there was a report that the president of the United States had asked the Pentagon to look at possible downsizing of the troops, and then the president went back and said, no, we're actually not considering it now. Again, all of this perhaps different people with different agendas. I mean, how do you explain it?
Or just good old-fashioned leaks from the administration. We simply don't know. The New York Times, that's usually a reliable source, David, they reported that Trump had asked the Pentagon to present him some options in this sphere, but then this was slapped down early this morning by John Bolton, the new national security advisor, saying he refuted the whole thing. But having said that, he's meeting with his South Korean counterpart today in Washington, so a lot could be happening behind the scenes.
Nina, you're staying with us, but let's bring to this discussion also Jonathan Wachtel, former spokesperson for United States mission to the United Nations. Jonathan, what do you think about the strategy so far? Both sides, especially North Korean, on their part, they're making concessions. Now the president, somewhat, there is this debate about the reducing the number of U.S. troops in South Korea. How are you reading this strategy?
First of all, with the reductions of troops, it's not even clear where, if there was a leak, it came from. It doesn't necessarily mean it would have come from the Trump administration. It could have been a ploy by the Chinese, by the North Koreans, some other player, the Russians trying to soften the negotiations, saying, hey, you're going to withdraw, and the U.S. saying, no, we're not, as some sort of weakening of the position.
But if there is peace between South and North Korea, let's say, then there's less need for U.S. presence there, no?
Not necessarily. First of all, don't forget that there was a war called the Korean War that happened between the United States and North Korea, of course, and South Korea, but also China. China has its own interests in this game, and they have a say, and it's not clear exactly how they're going to fit into this very complicated puzzle. Certainly, they're going to have a lot to say, and they're going to want an outcome that makes sense for their military and strategic needs, including they have a border that's over 800 miles long along the Korean Peninsula. Of course, they're going to be involved in this.
By all accounts, there have been very high-level talks between the Trump administration and North Korea. The president has refused to say if he himself has spoken personally with Kim Jong-un, but we know that there have been a lot of talks going back and forth between Mike Pompeo. Does it seem like it's following the traditional track of extremely high-level talks where you try to get some sort of agreement before you actually have the leaders meet at a summit meeting?
Yes, David. You don't want to get in a situation where you're leaving a lot of these balls up in the air without any sort of sense of where things maybe are going to go. And you have to work all that out, and you have to talk through things so that you're fully versed in what the other position is. You can't put the President of the United States in a room with his counterpart, if that's what you would call Kim Jong-un. That's how he likes to see himself. But you can't put these two people in the same room and leave it all up to whim and surprise. A lot has to be ironed out. A lot of the positions need to be clear. The North Koreans need to know where the United States stands on things.
Many people say we've been here before. North and South Korean leaders met in 2000, 2007. The word denuclearization was brought up so many times before. What's different then?
Well, what's different, first of all, is that the President of the United States
is President Trump.
Well, that is certainly different, but you're going to have the leader of the United States of America, arguably the strongest nation on the face of the earth, sitting down with the North Korean leader.
And that's
unprecedented. So even that is amazing. What else is new? There's been, more concrete discussion of putting an end to the war between the North and South Koreans at the recent summit. All the pomp and circumstance that we saw of that happening, and the goodwill, some of the gestures that the North Koreans have done in terms of stopping the ballistic missile tests, saying they're holding off on nuclear tests, concessions about one of the test sites. And now, of course, the discussion of releasing the hostages in North Korea, which, by the way, of course, were seized as bargaining chips in the first place, so that you would come upon such a moment, which we're witnessing now, so that they have some leverage.
You were here with us, it was a week ago, when there was Kim Jong-un and President Moon Jae-in from South Korea, who were there at their meeting along the DMZ. There's a lot of expectation that that's where the Trump-Kim Jong-un meeting will take place. Is the President of the United States giving too much by essentially, if that's the location, doing it on the doorstep of Kim Jong-un?
Not necessarily. There's a lot of drama associated with the DMZ, especially if the President of the United States goes into enemy territory, into the northern side of the DMZ. For President Trump, who of course likes to be in the spotlight and likes drama, that would be certainly a significant move. And it's not a sign necessarily of weakness. I mean, the United States still maintains 29,000 troops in that zone of soldiers and Marines, and by the way, is not going to withdraw them to end up in a weaker position going into negotiations. It makes no sense whatsoever.
I want to read to you this data. A South Korean TV channel, it's called MBC. They asked in a survey whether North Korea leader Kim Jong-un is trustworthy. 78% of South Koreans said yes. Are you buying it?
I find that to be a remarkable statistic. I hadn't seen that tall. First of all, NBC is a reputable organization. I actually, when I was a journalist many years ago, worked with them. So I believe that the statistic that they brought forth is probably true. In terms of a trustworthy partner, I don't know why a population would feel so strongly, and it sounds like almost in a warm sense, if that's, of a guy who's capable of killing his own people, enslaving them, and his own relatives.
Feeding him hungry dogs.
Now, of course, there's a euphoria in South Korea in terms of a hope that something good is going to come of this, that this horrible conflict, that the danger that, people living in Seoul have lived under the prospect of being shelled by missiles for decades. That's not a comfortable position to be in.
I want to bring back in Nina Larson, because, Nina, when the president said this morning that a date, location had been finalized for the summit, it'll be announced soon. And we all saw that there was this speech this afternoon at 3:45 by Mike Pompeo, the U.S. Secretary of State, and we thought, oh, that's the person who's going to announce the details. It didn't happen. How do you read all this?
It's just impossible to say. I mean, this is typical Trump style. I thought maybe there would be an announcement in the coming hours, but perhaps he wants to wait till after the weekend. I really couldn't tell you. It does seem that this summit's decided, but I think, again, he's leaving us with something. He's leaving us with a cliffhanger. He wants to keep us guessing.
Is it possible because maybe not everything's been finalized yet? It seems like if they've got the information, why not release it?
Maybe he wants to release it in a certain special way, David. I'm not sure.
Nina, Jonathan, just briefly, what are your thoughts about nominating President Trump for a Nobel Peace Prize?
I think people should set aside their personal prejudice in this type of thing and look at what's happening. And if, indeed, this leads to a place that is positive, then let the chips fall where they may and give the guy a peace prize.
Well, we've tried everything else with North Korea. So, if he's thinking out of the box, if he pulls it off, maybe he deserves it.
I'm with Jonathan on this. If they get a peace deal at the end of this and North Korea has a verifiable plan to denuclearize and peace breaks out on the Korean Peninsula, President Trump can have the Nobel Prize, he can take a Pulitzer Prize, he can take an Oscar, whatever prize he wants, even the, the World Series MVP championship where you get a free car, whatever he wants.
Obama got his prize for less than that. So, just saying.
For being elected. Yeah. Jonathan Wachtel, Nina Larson, thank you both. We appreciate it. Still ahead, hundreds of Palestinians were injured on this day along the Gaza border during clashes with Israeli security.
And Palestinian leader Mahmoud Abbas now says he's sorry for saying that Jews brought the Holocaust on themselves. That's next. Several hundred Palestinians were injured in Gaza on this day during a 6th straight week of border protests.
The Israeli military said that the demonstrations were smaller than in the past, but still violent. Defense correspondent Daniel Tzemach has the update.
For the 6th straight week, Palestinians have been participating in mass protests along the Israel-Gaza border. Today, 7,000 participated in protests in 5 different locations. 2 Israeli drones were also shot down in Palestinian territory. Earlier, we had a chance to speak to an Israeli military spokesperson on who he sees as responsible for the unrest on the other side.
When you look at the field, yes, sure, you don't see them with flags and with military uniforms, which is always the challenge when you're dealing with terrorist organizations. They never identify themselves for what they really are, and they prefer to hide behind civilians. However, the transports are all paid for by Hamas. The media operations and the calling out for people from the mosques to the riots are all done by Hamas, and all of the logistic support, the water, the medical facilities and everything else, the tents that have been put up here, all of them are paid for and organized by Hamas.
Earlier, there were protests on the Israeli side of the border, one led by Israeli members of parliament, Arab members of parliament, as well as left-wing activists. This protest focused on solidarity with the Palestinians in Gaza. Not too far away from there, another protest led by the Golden family, whose son was killed in the 2014 Gaza war and whose body is believed to be held by Hamas until this very day. Their message was that of pleading with the Israeli government to bring their son's body home. Let's take a listen to what some of those leading figures of those truce protests had to say.
Every Friday there are protests in Gaza with thousands of unarmed protesters. But regardless, snipers from the occupation are shooting and hitting them. Tens of Palestinians are being injured or killed. Some of them are journalists, some are women and children, and some are handicapped persons. This is a war crime in every sense.
We're gathered here for the first time with good people who want to help us, so that together we can gather all our energy and strengthen our leadership, and especially our Prime Minister and Defense Minister, who need to make a brave decision and bring back our soldiers from Gaza. Look, if our security forces were able to go to Iran in order to bring back all that intelligence, then how is it that for 4 years they cannot go 2 kilometers and bring back our soldiers? Nobody can tell me that it's not possible. Nobody can give me other excuses. We're sick of it.
Ultimately, the protests were not what the Israeli military was expecting today, a turnout not as strong as it's been in the past. But the fear is that the peak of this unrest is yet to come. Daniel Tzemach, I-24 News, the Israel-Gaza border.
Meantime, Palestinian leader Mahmoud Abbas has now apologized for comments he made this week when he blamed the Jews for causing the Holocaust.
Still, the damage to Abbas's reputation may also now hurt any prospects for peace talks. Middle East correspondent Emily Rose reports.
Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas closed a week of meetings of the Palestinian National Council, the first after a 22-year hiatus, with an apology.
If people were offended by my statement in front of the PNC, especially people of the Jewish faith, I apologize to them. I would like to assure everyone that it was not my intention to do so, and to reiterate my full respect of the Jewish faith, as well as other monotheistic faiths.
The PA chief walked back on comments he made earlier in the week, blaming Jews for the Holocaust, which sparked global rebuke from the U.S. to the European Union, and even to voices inside the PA. The PNC also vowed to appoint a successor to the 83-year-old Palestinian leader and resolve the decades-long rift with Hamas, which boycotted the meeting, highlighting divides between the Palestinian factions.
We have not been able to pay salaries in Gaza for the month of April for technical reasons, and this is not punishment, and I'm not going to allow this expression. A man cannot punish his people, and these are our people, and from tomorrow salaries will be paid.
And called for a review of the Oslo Accords and asked the executive committee to rescind the PLO's recognition of Israel and end the security coordination. Senior Palestinian officials told I-24 News earlier in the week it is Israel that is not keeping up its side of the deal.
The tendency is to declare that the Oslo agreement is obsolete because Israel violated it, did not implement it, and it's not binding to us because Israel did not consider Oslo agreement binding to it. So we will not accept the continuation of a situation where Oslo agreement is binding only to one side, the Palestinian side, and not to both sides.
The council early Friday also rejected a peace plan being formulated by the Trump administration. Abbas, earlier in the week, used his podium to fire shots at the U.S.
If America wants to offer something, let them say they support the two-state solution with East Jerusalem as the capital of Palestine, and that the U.S. is no longer a sole mediator.
And while the week has ended, with Abbas being re-elected as chairman of the PLO Executive Committee, the leader who seeks to cement his legacy may find old alliances are breaking down. Emily Rose, I-24 News.
For more, let's bring in Tuvia Tenenbaum, author, journalist, and founder of the Jewish Theater of New York. Tuvia, great to have you here.
Great to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Abbas walked back his rhetoric on Jews. You presented yourself when you went to the Palestinian territories, the West Bank, as a German journalist, and then you wrote this book. It's called Catch the Jew. You did it to get people's real, genuine reaction. Did this kind of Jews' hatred, this rhetoric, was something common in the West Bank?
Just one comment. I happen to be also a German journalist, so I just didn't say I'm Jewish. But yeah, what Abbas said is basically very, very common. This is what people think. Even when I had an interview with Hanan Ashrawi, with the face, the Western face for journalists of the PLO, she, for example, said to me that there was never a Jewish state in Palestine, and all the archaeologists, none of them has found yet a proof that there was a temple in Al-Aqsa, you know, around Al-Aqsa. But basically, this is what they believe. The belief is that the Jews are not real Jews, and if they are children of Satan anyway. You know, there's the big Satan is the United States, the small Satan is Israel, and that Israel, even moderates like Jibril Rajab, in his house I hear that the big problem is that, and they could say to me because I'm supposedly German, not Jewish, German, and they say that the big problem is that Rommel did not succeed, basically meaning that the Nazis at the time did not succeed to capture Palestine and then get rid of all the Jews over there. This comes from the moderates of the Palestinian leadership.
Where do they get this? In schools and imams?
This is the culture. This is what people think. It's like, you know,
but it's got to come from
everywhere.
Somewhere, right?
Of course it comes somewhere. It comes from parents. It comes from schools. It comes from imam. It comes from everywhere. It comes from media. I mean, this is what you have in Palestinian media. This is what you have. They never call Jews Jews. They never call Israel Israel. It's all al-ihtilal, the occupiers, or Josh al-ihtilal, the occupying force, the occupying army. It's never. The Jew doesn't enter the equation. The Jews are not supposed to be there, from their perspective. Never, never, never.
From the sense you've been getting on the ground there in the West Bank, how popular is Mahmoud Abbas?
Look, Mahmoud Abbas is popular or not, he doesn't even enter the equation because you don't care much. I mean, the Palestinians in general, and against what people think, most of Palestine, or whatever is where the Palestinians live, most of the Palestinians live very, very well. You know, usually we get from NGOs and from all kinds of organizations, we see poverty, we see
We're talking about the West Bank.
The West Bank, we're talking
about Gaza.
And you look, and they basically picked up, it's like going to California and taking you to South Central LA, you know? It's not California. You know, California is beautiful. You know? The same thing, Palestine is beautiful. It is Palestine. They're calling it already Palestine. There is no Jew allowed to be there. That's the reality. If a Jew walks in there, it's basically Judenrein. And that's the thinking. And they get their monies from European NGOs, mostly from Germany, sadly, but they get them, and they get also the anti-Semitism comes with it. You walk, the Palestinian cities are beautiful. Some Palestinians call it NGO Palestine, they call where they live, like in Nablus, in Hebron, in Jenin. It's beautiful places, and this is what people think.
What are people
think that they don't care about Mahmoud Abbas.
What are the
honestly, they care about getting the money from the Europeans, which build houses in Palestinian areas, gives them money, and gives them everything they want.
The Palestinians who don't have these anti-Semitic views of Jews, who don't say these things that Hanan Ashrawi says, are they ostracized within the Palestinian community, or are they just people don't care that much?
I have not met them yet, those people.
You haven't met any progressive Palestinians?
No, of course I met what people call progressive Palestinians. I met many of those people called progressive Palestinians. They would like the Jews to be somewhere else, maybe in Germany. It's not, you have to understand, I mean, in the Palestinian world, unlike our world, you know, we look like Europe. It's a Christian world, so to speak, but very few people believe, right? In Palestinian society, in the Islamic society of that, 95% of people are believers. It's not, and the progressive people, you know, some of them I really like, you know, as human beings, but had they known that I am Jewish, I would be dead. That's the sad part. I enjoyed my time with them. We left a lot, but that's what it is.
We enjoyed our time with you.
It's a pleasure. It's a mutual pleasure. Have a wonderful
Thank you.
Thank you.
day ahead.
Still ahead, in Syria, inspectors have reportedly completed their investigation at the site of last month's alleged chemical weapons attack in Douma.
In Syria, rebel infighting has caused a split in the western city of Homs.
Earlier this week, a group of rebels agreed to a ceasefire with the Syrian government. The area has been under heavy fire for weeks, but a faction within the group is now vowing to fight until the end.
To Syria's north, the International Chemical Weapons Inspectors have reportedly wrapped up their work in Douma. Russian defense officials say the group has completed their investigation at the site of the suspected chlorine attack.
The United States believes dozens of people were killed in a chemical attack by the Syrian government last month. It prompted missile strikes on Syria by a U.S.-led coalition. Both Syria and Russia deny a chemical attack took place.
Many of the inspectors may have left Syria, but the investigation apparently continues. The weapons team director says that they may need to look to exhume bodies of victims of the attack in order to take some samples.
Yeah, they say they're continuing to explore all avenues for collecting evidence in the attack, and that it is premature to speculate when the report would be concluded.
It's hard to understand, you know, when weapons inspectors, it took them several weeks before they could actually get in there anyway. What would be left if we're talking about a chlorine gas attack and you don't get there for several weeks? It seems like you're not going to find anything.
And we also were wondering, why are they being stalled all the time from entering the city? Did someone maybe try to tamper with the evidence? Was it certain Syrian factors, maybe the Russians?
And this is a group that it's not their responsibility to try to determine who deployed the chemical weapons, only if there was a chlorine attack. So they may not get us much closer to who was responsible. Anyway, still ahead. Nearly 2,000 residents in Hawaii have been ordered to evacuate their homes after the Kilauea volcano erupted Thursday, spewing lava, ash, and smoke.
Plus, President Trump defends Rudy Giuliani, saying that he is new on the job and that he's still learning. In Hawaii, there's lava pouring down some streets on Hawaii's Big Island.
The Kilauea volcano erupted after some 75 earthquakes over the past 2 days. When the eruption happened, 2 homes nearby were destroyed, and thousands of people in a nearby town were forced to leave their homes behind. Let's bring in Ken Rubin. He is the chairman of the Department of Geology and Geophysics at the University of Hawaii. And Ken, was this much of a surprise that Kilauea erupted?
Well, given the past history of the volcano and the number of earthquakes that started to happen in the couple of days before this eruption, it wasn't a complete surprise. We never know for sure if earthquakes are going to lead to an eruption or not, but the residents in the area were prepared ahead of time, or at least they were told ahead of time to anticipate that an eruption was very likely.
So in the days prior to the volcano's eruption, everyone received certain warnings, right? How dangerous or potentially dangerous the situation still is?
The situation is still really very dangerous. The areas that are affected right now are in the highest hazard zone for the volcano. It's sparsely populated. It's really a rural area. And the residents who live in that area are aware that there have been several other eruptions in the very near vicinity, a very large one in 1955 and another one in 1960. Those lasted between 1 and 3 months. And there was another one not too far away, about 10 kilometers away in 1977. So this is an area that erupts frequently. The people who live in this area are aware that there is a hazard, and they stay tuned. The volcano is very well monitored, and the U.S. Geological Survey has a Hawaii Volcano Observatory. It's an extremely well monitored volcano, and I believe most residents are aware of where they can go for constant updates to stay apprised of what's happening at the volcano. The large number of earthquakes that happened, which was actually several hundred in the couple of days before the eruption started, were probably as much alert as anyone needed in the area that something was different, something underfoot, and I believe most people started to prepare at that time.
Ken, as you pointed out, there are a few thousand people who live not too far away from the volcano zone. What's been the mood on the Big Island of Hawaii? What are you either hearing or reading in terms of what people are saying about all of this?
There's a range of opinions that people have, and I don't hear anything. People aren't panicking. I think most people who live in this area are fully aware of the volcano hazard. It's actually nearly impossible, if not impossible, to get insurance for one's home in that area because it's such a high-risk zone. So people sort of live there at their own risk. They have plans ahead of time, where to meet up with family and so forth if an evacuation should happen. Everything's been orderly so far, And at this stage, the eruption is a series of relatively short fissures. There's been a lot of what we call spattering and fountaining, where gas-infused lava shoots up about 100 meters above the vent. The lava flows haven't been very long yet. They haven't extended very far from those fissures. So at this stage, the activity is still fairly localized. That can change at any time. But right now, the number of vents is still in flux. Yesterday, there were 3 vents that had opened up, each of them a long fissure. And as of this morning, there were 2 additional ones that had opened up.
Ken Rubin, thank you and stay safe.
Thank you. Aloha.
President Trump traveling to...
I gotta stop you.
Yeah.
Aloha. Aloha. He said aloha.
He said aloha. Oh,
aloha.
I thought he said lava.
No, he said aloha as in see ya. Goodbye. Peace. It's like shalom. Whatever.
All right.
It's Hawaiian.
All right. President Trump, aloha, traveling to Texas to speak at the annual meeting of the National Rifle Association. Before he left, Mr. Trump addressed the recent revelation that he reimbursed his lawyer, Michael Cohen, for hush money Cohen paid to a porn star who claims to have had sex with Mr. Trump.
The comments were made by his other lawyer, Rudy Giuliani. Now the president is suggesting that Giuliani did not have all of the facts.
Why did you change your story on Stormy Daniels? We're not changing any stories. All I'm telling you is that this country is right now running so smooth. And to be bringing up that kind of crap and to be bringing up witch hunts all the time, that's all you want to talk about. You're going to see, excuse me.
You did not know
no, but you have to,
the payment.
Excuse me, you take a look at what I said. You go back and take a look. You'll see what I said.
You said no.
Excuse me. You go take a look at what we said. But this is a witch hunt like nobody's ever seen before. And what they should do is look at the other side, where terribly bad things have happened, where terribly bad things have been done. I will tell you this. When Rudy made the statements, Rudy's great, but Rudy had just started, and he wasn't totally familiar with everything. And Rudy, we love Rudy. He's a special guy. What he really understands is that this is a witch hunt. He understands that probably better than anybody. Excuse me. But Rudy understands this better than anybody. But when he made certain statements, he just started yesterday, so that's it. So, bottom line is, I want to talk to the people in charge if they can prove that it's a fair situation. The problem we have is that you have 13 people, they're all Democrats, and they're real Democrats. They're angry Democrats, and that's not a fair situation.
One thing we should point out is that the people who are in charge of the Stormy Daniels case, they are the prosecutors here in New York. They are now separate from the Mueller investigation, which referred this matter to the Justice Department. So the president may be getting a little bit confused. But in any case, let's bring in our senior national correspondent Michael Schur, who is in Nashville, Tennessee on assignment. And Schur, for the president to speak for a few minutes when he's leaving the White House and then to stop and talk to reporters again at Andrews Air Force Base and talk for a few more minutes on the same subject. What does that tell you about the president's perhaps level of anxiety about all of this?
Well, listen, how could he not be a little anxious about what's going on, David? Even this man who seems impenetrable and who thinks everyone else is wrong when it comes to the way they describe him and the way that the press covers him has to have a little bit of anxiety over the way this is being both prosecuted in court and in the public sphere. So I do think that there's a little bit of anxiety. He also feels as if he has a record to set straight, and that's what he's trying to do each time he steps in front of the microphones. This is the way he does it as well. He hasn't had a press conference in many months. So this is the kind of forum in which he's able to reach out to the press and tell them directly what he's feeling.
But what's with the Stormy Daniels story? Because the narrative keeps changing. How are you reading this inconsistency?
Well, you know, what's interesting is that the president went out of his way today to say, listen, Rudy Giuliani, he's new on the job. You got to cut him some slack. He wasn't up to date on everything. But yet the president didn't try and clarify what it was that he knew about Stormy Daniels. I think the more he talks about it, the less he feels he's going to get embroiled in it. So just to refute what a new person on his staff would be, to give him a vote of confidence, that's fine. But he wasn't going to go any further than that. To that, he was going to defer to his other counselors who have said don't engage in the conversation on this issue.
And Michael, we saw the president walk up with John Kelly there, his White House chief of staff, and make a point at the beginning of those remarks to reporters at Andrews Air Force Base to say the reporting on John Kelly is wrong. We have a great relationship, and to say that, oh, everything's fine. And this was, I guess, a response to a couple reports a few days ago that there had been friction, that Kelly had been frozen out. I think even one that Kelly had called President Trump an idiot.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That came a few weeks ago. John Kelly, listen, David, he has been sort of in the crosshairs of those who think that there is some kind of distance between the two, President Trump and his chief of staff, as there has been with his other chiefs of staff who have been there in the short time that he has been president. John Kelly is no different. They feel that he's been marginalized. This show of support was something that surprised a lot of people who go into the Brady press room every day and feel that this is kind of a problem for the president, that John Kelly cannot manage this president, that even John Bolton coming into the White House was going to be more of that kind of a figure in the way that they do messaging, even though John Bolton is obviously just dealing with national security issues, at least at this time. So John Kelly being with the president is an image that we haven't seen a lot, and it's something that the president is trying to shore up, a unified front in the White House against whatever that press corps is going to hit him with.
Michael Schur, our senior national correspondent on assignment in Tennessee. Michael, thank you.
When we come back, the growing concern over issues plaguing the Middle East, Israel, Gaza, Iran, and Syria, why all eyes are on the United States for what happens next.
Plus, he's an anti-Semite, Nazi supporter, and he denies the Holocaust, and he wants your vote if you live in Illinois. Meet the congressional candidate who was dumped by his own party. That's ahead. Some of America's top experts on the Middle East are gathered this weekend for a conference to talk about it, and they are worried.
Yeah, they have many questions and not many answers, but also there's a significant call from Saudi Arabia for peace and brotherhood. Our senior Washington correspondent Dan Raviv reports.
A gathering of scholars and diplomats concerned about violence between Palestinians and Israelis, looking out for reactions to the United States moving its embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem a week from Monday, and other issues such as new revelations about Iran's nuclear ambitions. At an annual conference of the Washington Institute for Near East Policy, David Makovsky.
It's a very busy period. I think most people's eyes are in Washington on does President Trump extend the nuclear deal with Iran on May 12th, because that could have an impact on a lot of arenas on how Iran deals with its role in the region. Does it become more problematic in Syria? I think another thing to look for is clearly if Iran and Israel are on a collision course in Syria.
Among the unknowns, did French President Emmanuel Macron persuade Trump to consider staying in the nuclear deal while demanding new talks with Iran to restrict its missile and other activities? Did German Chancellor Angela Merkel make any headway?
I think the European approach, frankly, is an interesting one. It's the first time they've admitted their shortcomings to this nuclear deal, and it needs to be supplemented. Right now, an American-European understanding at this point, that's significant.
Also significant in other ways, a senior cleric from Mecca, Saudi Arabia, Mohammed Al-Isa, head of the Muslim World League, meeting mostly Jewish donors to the Washington Institute. Al-Isa spoke with pride about his 2-hour visit to the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum.
People, when they lose their morality, can become beasts, human beasts.
He rejected any attempt to blame the 6 million Jews who were murdered during World War II for the crimes of the Nazis.
To reduce the importance of this disaster, using any excuses and not condemn this disaster is, in my estimation, to deny the criminality of this human crime.
Al-Isa was reacting in part to what Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas had said this week, blaming the Holocaust on Jewish behavior in Europe. As we've reported, Abbas has issued an apology condemning anti-Semitism and confirming his commitment, he says, to a two-state solution, a state of Palestine living in peace alongside a state of Israel. The Saudi visitor here, he avoided what he called political issues. David and Tal.
Dan Reviver, senior Washington correspondent. Dan, thank you.
And here in the U.S., there's been a strong reaction by the Republican Party to 3 candidates running for office due to their racist and anti-Semitic views. All have been disavowed by the party.
And despite the lack of GOP support, one of those candidates, Arthur Jones from Illinois, technically won his Republican primary. He ran unopposed. I-24 News correspondent Andy Rosegen met with Jones and talked to him about his controversial beliefs and his political future.
Was built by and for the white Christian people of this nation.
Arthur Jones is a longtime Nazi-supporting, Holocaust-denying anti-Semite, and he doesn't care what you think.
Do you deny the Holocaust ever happened?
I just showed you all kinds of proof to prove to anybody with ability to think rationally that the Holocaust is what I said it was before. It's nothing more than an international extortion racket to bleed and blackmail, extort, and terrorize the enemies of the Jews into silence or subservience.
Jones is also the Republican nominee for Congress in this suburban Chicago district.
I'm not criticizing Jews as Jews. I'm criticizing the so-called Holocaust survivors who have been proven over and over again to be outright liars, and they're liars for profit.
Jones and I had to meet in a park because no one in town, not even his own landlord, wants him around talking openly about his beliefs.
But the animosity against Jews in particular, I mean, that's terrifying.
Animosity from where?
From you.
It's not animosity. I'm just standing for the truth.
The Illinois Republican Party, which still clings to its standard bearer, Abraham Lincoln, disavows Jones, demands he drop out of the race, and calls him abhorrent. The feeling is mutual.
The Republican Party always put up some gutless wonder to drain votes away from me. Well, what they've set up here is what's called, I call it the two-party, Jew party, queer party system.
So how did this happen? Jones has run and lost numerous political races. 2 years ago, the Republican Party chased him away by invalidating many of his petition signatures in the race for this same seat. But this time, Republicans didn't even bother putting up their own candidate. And Jones quietly gathered enough valid signatures by walking door to door, presenting himself as a traditional social conservative, a veteran, and an opponent of foreign wars. He did not mention his beliefs.
You're on the record. You've said that you don't believe the Holocaust.
Forged records of Holocaust survivors are getting a special Social Security benefit.
His beliefs did become big national news a few weeks before the March primary vote, and yet even then, running unopposed, he still managed to pick up almost 21,000 votes in the primary. That's a depressing thought for the regional director of the Anti-Defamation League, which has been tracking and pushing back against Jones for years. The ADL's leader says that while the group remains non-political, state Republicans might have some soul-searching to do.
As leadership, they need to make a decision in terms of where they want their party to go and what kind of messaging they want out there.
The state Republican Party declined an on-camera interview, but they have said they will put forth their own Republican write-in candidate for November. That's a face-saving move that will needlessly cost them, since no Republican was ever expected to win anyway in this heavily Democratic district. And if he loses, Jones promises you won't hear the last of him. He's writing a book. Andy Rosegen, I-24 News, Chicago.
Wow.
This was a great piece, but I feel like I want to take a shower. It was...
Well, a couple of things. I mean, shame on the Republican Party for not running somebody else in the primary. They should have done that. That was a big mistake. But the other thing about it is it underscores that in the American election system, all you have to do is get the certified number of signatures, and literally anybody can run for office.
I just feel like I'm still shocked, calling Holocaust survivors liars, and we hadn't heard the last from him, right? According, he's writing a book. All right.
Have it out there. When we come back, Tall has been sleeping on the job. Actually, for her job in the city that never sleeps, she found a cool place to get some much-needed shut-eye. That's ahead.
Welcome back. Right now, history is being made in Jerusalem as the Giro d'Italia bike race makes its way through the streets.
Correspondent Alec Pollard has the details.
Even before the 2018 Giro d'Italia cycling event begins, it's already been marked a historic race. It's the first time a stage in one of cycling's 3 Grand Tours will begin outside of Europe, in Israel of all places. But there's also a race to be won, and it could be historic because of this man, Chris Froome. The Team Sky rider has already made his mark in the sport, winning the prestigious Tour de France 4 times. Last year, he achieved something that hadn't been done in 2 decades, winning 2 Grand Tours in a row, with victory in France as well as the Vuelta in Spain. And now he's set his sights even higher, surprising the cycling world by entering the Giro for the first time in 8 years. It's a bid for a monumental clean sweep of the 3 Grand Tours. But Chris Froome's phenomenal success has also been overshadowed by controversy. A drug test during his title run in Spain produced twice the allowed dosage of the anti-asthmatic drug salbutamol. Froome and his team have tried to convey business as usual.
We're doing our best to get this resolved now, and I'm keeping my head down. I've been staying focused on my training and getting ready for the season ahead.
But this is a sport tainted by endless doping scandals over the years. Most famously, stripping American hero Lance Armstrong of his record 7 Tour de France titles for use of performance-enhancing drugs. So the accusations hover heavily over the head of the British rider. When the 2018 Giro d'Italia kicks off in Jerusalem on the 4th of May, Chris Froome will be fighting not just for the title, but also for the battle to clear his name. Alec Pollard, I-24 News.
And we have lots more coming up this evening on Clear Cut with Michelle McCory. Michelle, what's coming up?
Well, Tal, it's a Friday, and unfortunately that means more violent riots on the Gaza border. We'll have the latest from the ground. This as Mahmoud Abbas attempts to backpedal his anti-Semitic remarks with an apology. Meanwhile, President Trump saying that a date and location have been set for a historic summit with Kim Jong-un, but he hasn't made the big reveal yet. Also, unemployment is at its lowest since 2000. So what does that mean for the economy? We will discuss all of that and much more on Clear Cut at the top of the hour. Tal and David, it's back to you.
All right. According to a new lifestyle survey, less than 1 in 4 New Yorkers get the recommended 8 hours of sleep or more.
Right, and there's a new place in New York City. It's called Nap York, and it addresses this exact problem, David. It offers 30 minutes of nap time during the day to hard-working New Yorkers like myself. So I checked it out. And the 2 parties will come together next week. Back to you in the studio. I'm so tired. This was my 5th live hit since this morning. I just wish I could rest somewhere before the next one. A lot of people, especially here in New York, do not get enough or proper sleep. Well, it's no wonder why we're all falling asleep at our desks. Now there's a solution, and I got my PJs on because it's nap time.
Hello, Camila.
Hi, how are you?
I'm here to take a nap.
Awesome.
I'm really super tired.
So we do have 2 different types of pods. Our first pod is more of the Japanese style pod. So that's where the concept came from, is Japan. They are rows that are stacked on top of each other. They're actually quite big. You have enough room to sit up and to feel, to breathe. We have the standalone pods, which are actually quite large inside. And we have beds that incline. So if you want to sit up and do work or meditate.
Well, aside from napping, the services that we provide is a self-serve cafe. So it's a concept where you can come in, you can order on our iPads, and then your food comes out on the conveyor belt once it's ready. So we're doing this to kind of create a space where it's quiet. We want to promote like a quiet cafe to kind of help people in New York City kind of come into a place where they can relax and recharge without the noise of the city.
In our culture here, particularly in New York, where we're talking about fast-paced, high productivity, it's going to be a shift for people to learn how to take a quick break and sleep during the day.
The concept attracts people because they never thought that they could kind of find like a little oasis in the middle of the city.
How do you wake me up?
So how it works is we give you a little restaurant pager. It vibrates when your session is up. And here's your iMac. All right, someone will show you to your pod.
Thank you.
Enjoy.
All right, we're ready to take a nap. Oof. Now back to the office.
For the record, that is nice. That was Steve Coombs' teddy bear, right?
Right, right, and he also woke me up.
Why not just use the couch down in the green room?
Well, you know.
All these guys use it.
Oh, sorry. No. We are hard workers here at I-24 News, David, but you get some time till stateside tonight, right? Take a nap.
That's it for I-24 News. More ahead after this.
Great weekend.